Read fast. Read fast.
By the way, I did do a little bit of research and I did find an actual biography on Kafka's last love in life. And it's pretty interesting. So I'll be posting a few little excerpts from that at some point. Uh, so just to let you know, I think there's more than one biography, and I should be able to tell you her name right now, but I can't. So forgive me. Anyway, for those of out there in YouTube land, we are approaching the last pages of Kafka's The Trial. And to tell you the truth, some of the members are very excited about this
Okay. Okay.
and have found reading the trial to be, what do you think? A trial.
Trial.
That being said, I will begin the reading so we can get this torture over with as quickly as possible. Okay, this is a scene where Kay, our hero or anti-hero, is in a church and it involves a priest and all this stuff. So here we go. So both were now silent for a long time. In the prevailing darkness, the priest certainly could not make out Kay's features, while Kay saw him distinctly by the light of the small lamp. Why did he not come down from the pulpit? He hadn't preached a sermon. He had only given Kay some information, which would be likely to harm him rather than help him when he came to consider it. Yet the priest's good intentions seemed to Kay beyond question. It was not impossible that they could come to some agreement if the man would only quit his pulpit. It was not impossible that Kay could obtain decisive and acceptable counsel from him, which might, for instance, point the way not toward some influential manipulation of the case, but toward a circumvention of it, a breaking away from it altogether, a mode of living completely outside the jurisdiction of the court. This possibility must exist. Kay had of late given much thought to it. And should the priest know of such a possibility, he might impart his knowledge if he were appealed to. Although he himself belonged to the court, and as soon as he heard the court impugned, had forgotten his own gentle nature, so far as to shout Kay down. Katrina.
Would you not like to come down here? Asked Kay. If you're not going to give a sermon, come down here with me. Now I can come down, said the priest. Perhaps he regretted having shouted at Kay. As he took down the lamp from its hook, he said, to start off, I had to speak to you from a distance. Otherwise, I'm too easily influenced and forget my duty. Kay waited for him at the foot of the steps. While he was still on one of the higher steps, he came down them. As he came down them, the the priest reached out his hand, excuse me, for Kay to shake. Can you spare me a little of your time? Asked Kay. As much time as you need, said the priest, and passed him the little lamp for him to carry. Even at close distance, the priest did not lose a certain solemnity that seemed to be part of his character. You are very friendly towards me, said Kay, as they walked up and down beside each other in the darkness of one of the side naves. It makes you an exception among all those who belong to the court. I can trust you more than any of the others I've seen. I can speak openly with you. Don't fool yourself, said the priest. How could I be fooling myself? Asked Kay. You fool yourself in the court, said the priest. It talks about this self-deceit in the opening paragraphs to the law. In front of the law there is a doorkeeper. A man from the countryside comes up to the door and asks for entry, but the doorkeeper says he can't let him into the law right now. The The man thinks about this and then he asks if he'll be able to go in later on. That's possible, says the doorkeeper, but not now. Next, please.
Since the door to the law stands open, as it always does, and the doorkeeper steps to one side, the man bends to look through the door at the interior. When the doorkeeper notices this, he laughs and says, "If you are so tempted, just try to enter in spite of my prohibition. Take note, I am powerful, and I am only the lowest doorkeeper. But from room to room stand doorkeepers, each more powerful than the last. The mere aspect of the third is more than even I can endure." Such difficulties had not been expected by the man from the country. The law is supposed to be accessible to everyone, and at all times, he thinks. But as he now looks more closely at the doorkeeper in his coat of fur, and his great pointed nose and his long and scraggly black tartar beard, he decides it'd be better to wait until he gets permission to enter. The doorkeeper gives him a stool and lets him sit to one side of the door. There he sits for days and years. He makes many attempts to be allowed in, and wearies the doorkeeper with his entreaties. The doorkeeper occasionally subjects him to brief interrogation, asks about his home, and many other things. But these are the kind of apathetic questions great lords ask, and in the end, he tells him each time that he cannot allow him to enter yet. The man, who has equipped himself well for this journey, gives everything he has, no matter how valuable, to bribe the doorkeeper. The latter indeed accepts everything. But as he does, he says, "I accept this only that you may not think you have neglected anything." During these many years, the man keeps watch on the doorkeeper almost without a pause. He forgets the other doorkeepers, and this first doorkeeper seems to him the only obstacle to his entry into the law. He curses his unfortunate chance loudly in the first years, and later, as he grows old, he merely mumbles to himself. He becomes infantile, and as in the many years spent watching the doorkeeper, he has come to know even the fleas in his fur collar. He begs the fleas themselves to come to his aid and persuade the doorkeeper to change his mind. Finally, his sight grows weak, and he does not know if it is really getting darker around him, or if his eyes are deceiving him. But he does manage to distinguish, and in the dark, a radiance which breaks out imperceptibly from the door to the law. He does not live much longer. Before his death, everything he has experienced during his time converges in his mind into one question he has not yet put to the doorkeeper. He beckons him. As he can no longer raise his stiffening body, the doorkeeper has to bend low to him, for the difference in size between them has changed, very much to the disadvantage of the man from the country. "What else do you still want to know?" asks the doorkeeper. "You are insatiable." "But everybody strives for the law," says the man. "How is it that in all these years nobody except myself has asked for admittance?" The doorkeeper realizes the man has reached the end of his life, and to penetrate his imperfect hearing, he roars at him. "Nobody else could gain admittance here. This entrance was meant only for you. I shall now go and close it." Orla.
And I have to say, I'm totally lost because
Yeah,
are you as well?
yeah, I am.
So the
So,
doorkeeper,
Page 215 in my edition of the book. What edition do you have, Orla?
the Everyman Library, and so does Anna, and we're both lost.
Yeah.
You want me to pick it up, Orla, and if you find it, you can come in behind me.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, Donna, please.
Oh. The doorkeeper deluded the man, said Kay immediately, strongly attracted by the story. That's a new paragraph, by the way. "Don't be too hasty," said the priest. "Don't take over an opinion without testing it. I have told you the story in the very words of the scriptures. There's no mention of delusion in it, but it's clear enough," said Kay, "and your first interpretation of it was quite right." The doorkeeper gave the message of salvation to the man only when it could no longer help him. He was not asked the question any earlier, said the priest, and you must consider, too, that he was only a doorkeeper, and as such fulfilled his duty. What makes you think he fulfilled his duty? Asked Kay. He didn't fulfill it. His duty might have been to keep all strangers away, but this man for whom the door was intended should have been let in. You have not enough respect for the written word, and you are altering the story, said the priest. The story contains two important statements made by the doorkeeper about the admission to the law, one at the beginning, the other at the end. The first statement is that he cannot admit the man at the moment, and the other is that this door was intended only for the man. If there were a contradiction between the two, you would be right, and the doorkeeper would have deluded the man. But there is no contradiction. The first attempt, on the contrary, even implies the second. One could almost say that in suggesting to the man the possibility of future admittance, the doorkeeper is exceeding his duty. At that moment, his apparent duty is to refuse admittance, and indeed many commentators are surprised that the suggestion should be made at all, since the doorkeeper appears to be a precisian with a stern regard for duty. He does not once leave his post during these many years, and he does not shut the door until the very last minute. He is conscious of the importance to his office, for he says, I am powerful. He is respectful to his superiors, for he says, I am only the lowest doorkeeper. He is not garrulous, for during all these years he puts only what are called impersonal questions. He is not to be bribed, for he says, in accepting a gift, I take this only to keep you from feeling that you have left something undone. Where his duty is concerned, he is to be moved neither by pity nor rage, for we are told that the man wearied the doorkeeper with his importunity. And finally, even his external appearance hints at a pedantic character, the large pointed nose and the long, thin, black tartar beard. You with me now, Orla? No?
Oh dear.
No. Well, where are you? Okay, let's start there. Where are you?
I think I will just listen.
Okay, but are you anywhere near where Kay is talking with the priest?
Yes, yes. But I think it's just
It's a whole other translation or something. It doesn't
yeah.
match up.
What about the paragraph, so the doorkeeper deluded the man?
No, one of the paragraphs begins, Kay said that with finality, but it was not his final judgment.
Say that again, Anna.
I think
Yeah,
that's too
it's-
far ahead.
No, well,
Yeah, that's a
well, you're
little bit
okay. So
ahead.
for
Yeah,
in terms
go
of
back
in
one.
terms of in terms of the story at the end, how much do you have to go to the end of the chapter?
Could you go back just one paragraph, Anne?
We're very close to the end of the chapter.
Yeah, we are very close. But yeah, because the start of this chapter is the doorkeeper, however, also had other characteristics which are very favorable. And then when that's finished, the next one is the one you're saying, I think, you know the story better than I do. So you only need to go back one full, it's a long paragraph, but just one.
I'm going to just listen because it's too much to try and find.
It's
I've been
fine.
searching ever since we started and I'm missing the
Yeah,
story.
it's,
So
it's
Okay.
difficult.
Listening is good. Listening is good.
Okay,
right.
I'll go
Find the
ahead.
black
So
tartar
not
beard.
Donna. So Anne,
Okay.
you would be the next
Yeah.
reader.
Okay. The doorkeeper, however, also had other characteristics which are very favorable to anyone who seeks admittance, and which help to explain why he exceeded his duty somewhat in suggesting the possibility of future admittance. For it cannot be denied that he is rather simple-minded and therefore rather conceited. even if his statements about his own power and that of the other doorkeepers, and about their fearsome appearance, which even he cannot bear, as I say, even if all these statements are correct in themselves, the manner in which he expresses them indicates that his perceptions are clouded by naivety and conceit. Commentators say to this, truly to understand something and to misunderstand the same thing are not entirely mutually exclusive. Nevertheless, we must assume that such naivety and conceit, in however trivial a form they are expressed, still impair his ability to guard the entrance. They are defects in the character of the doorkeeper. In addition to this, the doorkeeper seems to have a kind nature. He is by no means an official true terror. In the very first moments he laughs and invites the man to enter in spite of the express and strictly enforced ban on admittance. Then he does not send him away, but as the text says, gives him a stool and lets him sit down to one side of the door. The patience with which he tolerates the pleas of the man during all those years, the brief questions he asks him, his acceptance of the gifts, the courtesy with which he allows the man beside him to curse the unhappy fate that has placed the doorkeeper here, all this suggests that he feels pity for the man. Not every doorkeeper would have acted like this. And finally he bends right down when the man beckons him to give him the chance to put his last question. He expresses only faint impatience. The doorkeeper knows, after all, that it is all over with the man in the words, "You're insatiable." Some go even further in this interpretation and believe the words, "You are insatiable," express a sort of kindly admiration, though they are not free from condensation. At all events, the figure of the doorkeeper emerges in a different light from how you see it. Next reader, please.
Orla, have you caught up by any chance?
No,
No.
Anyway.
Okay.
No hope. I'm just listening.
You have studied the story more exactly and for a longer time than I have, said Kay. They were both silent for a little while. Then Kay said, "So you think the man was not deluded?" "Don't misunderstand me," said the priest. "I'm only showing you the various opinions concerning that point. You must not pay too much attention to them. The scriptures are unalterable, and the comments often enough merely express the commentator's bewilderment. In this case, there even exists an interpretation which claims that the deluded person is really the doorkeeper." "That's a far-fetched interpretation," said Kay. "On what is it based?" "It is based," answered the priest, "on the simple-mindedness of the doorkeeper. The argument is that he does not know the law from inside. He knows only the way that leads to it, where he patrols up and down. His ideas of the interior are assumed to be childish, and it is supposed that he himself is afraid of the other guardians whom he holds up as bogies before the man. Indeed, he fears them more than the man does, since the man is determined to enter after hearing about the dreadful guardians of the interior, while the doorkeeper has no desire to enter, at least not so far as we are told. Others again say that he must have been in the interior already, since he is after all engaged in the service of the law and can only have been appointed from inside. This is countered by arguing that he may have been appointed by a voice calling from the interior, and that anyhow he cannot have been far inside, since the aspect of the third doorkeeper is more than he can endure. Moreover, no indication is given that during all these years he ever made any remarks showing a knowledge of the interior, except for the one remark about the doorkeepers. He may have been forbidden to do so, but there is no mention of that either. On these grounds, the conclusion is reached that he knows nothing about the aspect and significance of the interior, so that he is in a state of delusion. But he is deceived also about his relation to the man from the country, for he is subject to the man and does not know it. Next.
Oh, that would be, I know, okay. Let's see. I'm sorry, I got distracted just for a minute, and so I'm having trouble
Yeah,
finding
I'm
out
lost.
where we should start.
I'm lost too.
He treats the man instead.
You want me to take it up?
Yes, please, Joe.
He is subordinate to this man and does not know it. That he treats the man as subordinate to himself can be seen from much that you probably still remember. That he is, in fact, subordinate to the man can be deduced just as clearly according to this argument. In the first place, a free man is superior to the bondsman. Now, the man from the country is really free. He can go where he likes. It is only entry into the law which is denied him, and this only by one individual, the doorkeeper. When he sits down on the stool to one side of the door and remains there his whole life long, this happens voluntarily. The narrative tells of no compulsion. The doorkeeper, on the other hand, is tied to his post by his office. He may not go elsewhere, and to judge by appearances, neither may go into the interior, even if he wanted to. Also, it is true, he is in the service of the law, but he serves only for this entrance. So only for the man for whom alone this entrance is destined. Thus subordinate to the man for this reason as well. It must be assumed he has performed mere hollow service over many years, as long as it takes to grow to manhood. For it is said a man came, that is, somebody grown to manhood. So the doorkeeper had to wait a long time before achieving his purpose. And indeed, he had to wait just as long as the other wished. For after all, the man came of his own free will. And the end of his service too is determined by the end of the man's life. So he remains subordinate to him to the end. And again it is emphasized that the doorkeeper seems to know nothing of all this. But this is not considered anything remarkable, for according to this argument, the doorkeeper suffers under an even greater illusion. This concerns his service. At the end, he speaks of the entrance and says, "I shall go now and close it." But at the beginning, it is written that the door to the law stands open, as it always does. But if it always stands open, always that is, independent of the lifespan of the man for whom it is destined, that not even the doorkeeper can close it. Opinions differ. But whether by announcing he is now going to close the doorkeeper is merely giving an answer, or whether he wants to stress his devotion to duty, or wants to make the man feel regret and sorrow at the very last moment. But many are united in the opinion that he will not be able to close the door. They even believe that, at least towards the end, he is subordinate to the man in knowledge too, for the latter sees the radiance which breaks out from the entrance to the law, while the doorkeeper must, because of his duty, be standing with his back to the entrance, and says nothing to indicate he has noticed any change. Anyone want to take over from me?
That is very well argued, said Kay, after repeating to himself in a low voice several passages from the priest's exposition. It is well argued, and I am inclined to agree that the doorkeeper is deluded. But that has not made me abandon my former opinion, since both conclusions are to some extent compatible. Whether the doorkeeper is clear-sighted or deluded does not dispose of the matter. I said the man is deluded. If the doorkeeper is clear-sighted, one might have doubts about that. But if the doorkeeper himself is deluded, then his delusion must of necessity be communicated to the man. That makes the doorkeeper not indeed a swindler, but a creature so simple-minded that he ought to be dismissed at once from his office. You mustn't forget that the doorkeeper's delusions do himself no harm, but do infinite harm to the man. There are objections to that, said the priest. Many aver that the true story confers no right on anyone to pass judgment on the doorkeeper. Whatever he may seem to us, he is yet a servant of the law, That is, he belongs to the law, and as such is set beyond human judgment. In that case, one dare not believe that the doorkeeper is subordinate to the man. Bound as he is by his service, even at the door of the law, he is incomparably freer than anyone at large in the world. The man is only seeking the law. The doorkeeper is already attached to it. It is the law that has placed him at his post. To doubt his integrity is to doubt the law itself. I don't agree with that point of view, said Kay, shaking his head. For if one accepts it, one must accept as true everything the doorkeeper says. But you yourself have sufficiently proved how impossible it is to do that. No, said the priest, it is not necessary to accept everything as true. One must only accept it as necessary. A melancholy conclusion, said Kay. It turns lying into a universal principle. 2 more paragraphs for the next person.
I can go. I found it. Kay
Okay.
said as if it were his final word, but it was not his conclusion. He was too tired to think about all the ramifications of the story, and the sort of thoughts they led him into were not familiar to him. Unrealistic things better suited for officials of the court to discuss than for him. The simple story had lost its shape, wanted to shake it off, and the priest, who now felt quite compassionate, allowed this and accepted Kay's remarks without comment, even though his view was certainly very different from Kay's. In the silence, they carried on walking for some time. Kay stayed close beside the priest without knowing where he was. The lamp in his hand had long since gone out. Once just in front of him, he thought he could see the statue of a saint by the glitter of the silver on it, although it quickly disappeared back into the darkness. Somebody want to finish it off?
I'll take a turn now, I found.
Oh, good.
Okay. And was instantaneously lost in the darkness again. To keep himself from being utterly dependent on the priest, Kay asked, "Aren't we near the main doorway now?" "No," said the priest, "we're a long way from it. Do you want to leave already?" Although at that moment Kay had not been thinking of leaving, he answered at once, "Of course I must go. I'm the chief clerk at a bank. They're waiting for me. I only came here to show a business friend from abroad round the cathedral." "Well," said the priest, reaching out his hand to Kay, "then go." "But I can't find my way alone in this darkness," said Kay. "Turn left to the wall," said the priest, "then follow the wall without leaving it, and you'll come to the door." The priest had already taken a step or two away from him, but Kay cried out in a loud voice, "Please wait a minute." "I'm waiting," said the priest. "Don't you want anything more from me?" asked Kay. "No," said the priest. "You were so friendly to me for a time," said Kay, "and explained so much to me, and now you let me go as if you cared nothing about me." "But you have to leave now," said the priest. "Well, yes," said Kay. "You must see that I can't help it." "You must first see who I am," said the priest. "You are the prison chaplain," said Kay, groping his way nearer to the priest again. His immediate return to the bank was not so necessary as he had made out. He could quite well stay longer. "That means I belong to the court," said the priest. "So why should I want anything from you?" "The court wants nothing from you. It receives you when you come, and it dismisses you when you go." Woo.
Whoa. So we've arrived at chapter 10. Okay, so everyone should be able to find chapter 10 at this point.
The end.
And we have 2 people who have not read it all today, and one is Orla. So Orla, are you at chapter 10?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'll ask you to read, and then I will ask Joan to read after you, and then I will read after Joan, and we'll see where we go after that.
On the evening before Kay's 31st birthday,
Come a
it was
little
about
closer
nine-
to the microphone, Orla.
I'm sorry. On the evening before Kay's 31st birthday, it was about 9 o'clock, the time when a hush falls on the street. Two men came to his lodging, in frock coats, pallid and plump, with top hats that were apparently irremovable. After some exchange of formalities regarding precedence at the front door, they repeated the same ceremony more elaborately before Kay's door. Without having been informed of their visit, Kay was sitting, also dressed in black, in an armchair near the door, slowly pulling on a pair of new gloves that fitted tightly over the fingers, looking as if he were expecting guests. He stood up at once and scrutinized the gentleman with curiosity. "So you were meant for me?" he asked. The gentleman bowed, each indicating the other with the hand that held the top hat. Kay admitted to himself that he had been expecting different visitors. He went to the window and took another look at the dark street. Nearly all the windows at the other side of the street were also in darkness. In many of them, the curtains were drawn. At one lighted tenement window, some babies were playing behind bars, reaching with their little hands towards each other, although not able to move themselves from the spot. "Tenth-rate old actors they send for me," said Kay to himself, glancing round again to confirm the impression. "They want to finish me off cheaply." He turned abruptly towards the men and asked, "What theatre are you playing at?" "Theatre?" said one, the corners of his mouth twitching as he looked for advice to the other, who acted as if he were a dumb man struggling to overcome a stubborn disability. "They're not prepared to answer questions," said Kay to himself, and went to fetch his hat. Next, please.
While still on the stairs, the two of them tried to take Kay by the arms, and he said, "Wait till we're in the street. I'm not an invalid." But just outside the street door, they fastened on him in a fashion he had never before seen or experienced. They kept their shoulders close behind his, and instead of crooking their elbows, wound their arms around him at full length, holding his hands in a methodical, practiced, irresistible grip. Kay walked rigidly between them. The three of them were interlocked in a unity which would have brought all three down together had one of them been knocked over. It was a unity such as can be formed almost by lifeless elements alone. Under the street lamps, Kay attempted time and again, difficult though it was at such very close quarters, to see his companions more clearly than had been possible in the dusk of
I
his
now
room.
put the microphone here.
Perhaps they are tenors, he thought, as he studied their fat double chins. He was repelled by the painful cleanliness of their faces. One could literally see that the cleansing hand had been at work in the corners of the eyes, rubbing the upper lip, scrubbing out the furrows of the chin. When that occurred to Kay, he halted, and in consequence the others halted too. They stood on the verge of an open, deserted square adorned with flower beds. "Why did they send you of all people?" he said. It was more like a cry than a question. The gentlemen obviously had no answer to make. They stood waiting with their free arms hanging like sick room attendants, waiting while their patient takes a rest. "I won't go any farther," said Kay experimentally. No answer was needed to that. It was sufficient that the two men did not loosen their grip and tried to propel Kay from the spot. But he resisted them. "I shan't need my strength much longer. I'll expend all the strength I have," he thought. Into his mind came the recollection of flies struggling away from the fly paper till their little legs were torn off. "The gentleman won't find it easy." Duncan?
And then, before them, Fräulein Brewster appeared, mounting a small flight of steps leading into the square from a low-lying side street. It was not quite certain that it was she, but the resemblance was close enough. Whether it were really Fraulein Brewster or not, however, did not matter to Kay. The only thing was that he suddenly realized the futility of resistance. There would be nothing heroic in it were he to resist, to make difficulties for his companions, to snatch at the last appearance of life by struggling. He set himself in motion, and the relief his warders felt was transmitted to some extent even to himself. They suffered him now to lead the way, and he followed the direction taken by the girl ahead of it. Not that he wanted to overtake her or to keep her in sight as long as possible, but only that he might not forget the lesson she had brought into his mind. The thing I can do now, he told himself, and the regular correspondence between his steps and the steps of the other two confirmed his thought. The only thing for me to go along doing is to keep my intelligence calm and analytical to the end. I always wanted to snatch at the world with 20 hands, and not for a very laudable motive either. That was wrong. And am I to show now that not even a year's trial has taught me anything? Am I to leave this world as a man who has no common sense? Are people to say of me after I'm gone that at the beginning of my case I wanted to finish it, and at the end of it I wanted it to begin again? I don't want that to be said. I'm grateful for the fact that these half-dumb, senseless creatures have been sent to accompany me on this journey, and that I have been left to say to myself all that is needed. And I think we're back to Joe, if I'm not mistaken.
The Fraulein, meanwhile, had bent into a side street, but by this time Kay could do nothing without her, and submitted himself to the guidance of his escort. In complete harmony, all three now made their way across a bridge in the moonlight. The two men readily yielded to Kay's slightest movement, and when he turned slightly towards the parapet, they turned too, in a solid front. The water, glittering and trembling in the moonlight, divided on either side of a small island, on which the foliage of trees and bushes rose in thick masses, as if bunched together. Beneath the trees ran gravel paths, now invisible with convenient benches on which Kay had stretched himself at ease many a summer. I didn't mean to stop altogether, he said to his companions, shamed by their obliging compliance. Behind Kay's back, the one seemed to reproach the other gently for the mistaken stop they had made, and then all three went on again. Someone want to finish up?
Okay, yeah, Joe Kenny, if you would, please.
They passed through several steep alleyways where occasionally they saw policemen standing about or walking, sometimes in the distance, sometimes very close at hand. One, who had a bushy moustache, was fingering the hilt of his saber. Seemed to step deliberately towards this not exactly innocent-looking group. The gentleman stopped short. The policeman seemed about to open his mouth, and Kay, exerting his strength to drag the gentleman forward. He turned round several times as a precaution to see if the policeman was following, but when they had a corner between them and the policeman, Kay began to run, and the gentleman had to run too, despite severe shortness of breath. Someone else take it up there? I keep going then.
Well,
Go on, Anne. Yep.
I'll do a paragraph. So they came quickly out of the town, which at this point merged almost without transition into the open fields. A small stone quarry, deserted and desolate, lay quite near to us, still a completely urban house. Here the two men came to a standstill, whether because this place had been their goal from the very beginning or because they were too exhausted to go further. Now they loosened their hold on Kay, who stood waiting dumbly, took off the top hats and wiped the sweat from their brows with pocket handkerchiefs. meanwhile surveying the quarry. The moon shone down on everything with that simplicity and serenity which no other light possesses. Next.
Do you want to go, Katrina?
Okay. After after exchanging a few courtesies about who was to carry out the next task, the gentleman did not seem to have been allocated specific functions. One of them went to Kay and took his coat, his waistcoat, and finally his shirt off him. Kay made an involuntary shiver, at which the gentleman gave him a gentle, reassuring tap on the back. Then he carefully folded the things up as if they would still be needed, even if not in the near future. He did not want to expose Kay to the chilly night air without moving in, though, so he took him under the arm and walked up and down with him a little way while the other gentleman looked around the quarry for a suitable place. When he found it, he made a sign of the other gentleman and escorted him there. Somebody want to take it on?
Oh yeah, I'll go. It was close to the quarry face. A stone that had broken loose lay there. The men sat Kay on the ground, laid him against the stone, and cushioned his head on the top. In spite of all the trouble they took, and in spite of all Kay's cooperation, his posture was still most awkward and unnatural. So one of them asked the other to leave the positioning of Kay's body to him. But that made things no better. Finally, they left him in a position that was not even the most comfortable of those they had already tried. Okay, someone else done our turn?
Donna, if you're reading, please turn on your mic.
And one of them opened his frock coat, and out of a sheath that hung from a belt girt round his waistcoat, drew a long, thin, double-edged butcher's knife.
Yeah.
Up and tested the cutting edges in the moonlight. Once more the odious ceremonial of courtesy began. The first handed the knife across Kay to the second, who handed it across Kay back again to the first. Kay now perceived clearly that he was supposed to seize the knife himself as it travelled from hand to hand above him and plunge it into his own breast. But he did not do so. He merely turned his head, which was still free to move, and gazed around him. He could not completely rise to the occasion. He could not relieve the officials of all their tasks. The responsibility for this last failure of his lay with him, who had not left him the remnant of strength necessary for the deed. Next, please.
Hey, who's going to read?
I'd say, is it?
Orla?
Okay.
Yeah.
His glance fell on the top story of the house adjoining the quarry. With the flicker as of a light going up, the casement of a window there suddenly flew open. A human figure, faint and insubstantial at that distance and that height, leaned abruptly far forward and stretched both arms still farther. Who was it? A friend? A good man? Someone who sympathized? Someone who wanted to help? Was it one person only? Or was it mankind? Was help at hand? Were there arguments in his favor that had been overlooked? Of course there must be. Logic is doubtless unshakable, but it cannot withstand a man who wants to go on living. Where was the judge whom he had never seen? Where was the high court to which he had never penetrated? He raised his hands and spread out all his fingers. But the hands of one of the partners were already at Kay's throat, while the other thrust the knife deep into his heart and turned it there twice. With failing eyes, Kay could still see the two of them immediately before him, cheek leaning against cheek, watching the final act. Like a dog, he said. It was as if the shame of it must outlive him.
Oh,
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Let's go back to the start and read it again.
Yes.
That's a good idea, Katrina.
How long did this take us?
I think Joe's suggestion actually
Good
really
one.
brings it in focus. This is the parable of being before the law right here.
Hmm.
We can do whatever we want to do. Okay. We could theoretically go back and read it again.
Mhm.
Or we can say, no, that's enough. I need to think about it. Or we can say, no, that's enough. I never want to think about this book ever again in my life.
But there's one thing we are not allowed to do, though. There's one thing we can never do is understand it.
There you go.
We can,
Little
we
bits
can,
of
we
it,
can
Joe.
create multiple understandings of it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
For me, I'm really glad that I read it with all of you, because
yeah.
I wouldn't have sustained
Mm.
it, my interest on my own. I would have, done anything but pick up the book to keep reading. But I am really glad I've read this, because to me, it is the atmosphere of Prague at the time of Kafka, which precedes all of that which happened under Hitler. And it really shows that you're powerless as an individual to rescue yourself or participate in any kind of redeeming activity. It's I think it's very, very sobering, and well, like I said, I'm glad I got through it with you.
Yeah.
I think they all pretty much feel the same way, I would think.
Uh-huh.
So,
It has a line there. It turns lying into a universal principle. I think that's fabulous description of what's happening today. And also that little image of the two babies sitting, looking at each other, and they can't move, he says, I find the detail that Kafka and the descriptions, the gestures that he puts into all of this are kind of extraordinary, and kind of how his mind is working all the time. Apart from the arguments of about the doorkeeper and the guy outside, all these little details, and towards the end, when that person opens the window and he's about to be killed, and he says, "Are these friends or is this mankind?" It's kind of yeah.
And those little descriptions you're describing, they transfer to the present day.
Yeah.
As we were reading them, I was seeing kind of clips that you catch on the news in the Atlantic, and it was very, very today. And that priest and his whole kind of parable, as I call it, a parable of the doorkeeper, all the arguments about this, that, and the other, and on the one hand, one commentator on the other, all these self-appointed biblical interpreters that we begin to hear lately, and we know that the devil can quote scripture to his own ends.
Yeah.
And but I began to see today, which means the thing is working. In fact, I got frightened by this book several times. I would have, like Anne said, I'd have gone off to read something else.
And also, I thought it was strange. I thought that it was like a Kafkaesque experience reading it, because we couldn't find our places in it some of the time.
Yes.
There was a chapter missing another time. And, it wasn't like an ordinary book, and this is the very thing, we were reading the very thing in a way that Kafka was describing,
This was our trial.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is more our purgatory.
Yeah.
And that we had to survive to come out the other side and go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
There really was no trial, was there?
No, it's never
No.
got no.
No.
That's the point that Tom was sort of making, isn't it? That the trial is reading the book is the trial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on trial.
Hmm.
But it's also interesting how precise each character was with their role in society. You know, like the priest belongs to the court, and
Yeah.
right, and well, and the doorkeepers, the one I'm thinking about, like he wasn't going to go beyond his responsibility to say, well, the door is open for you, enter. That was beyond his call of duty. I have known
Well,
so many people like that at work, like, oh my God. You know, just take the extra step and be empathetic and
Yeah.
guide
But
somebody
see,
through a
this
troubled
is
time.
oh, well, this is the thing. Kay did not take. Oh, Carol, you're going to have to unmute yourself because there was some talking in the background. Do you know how? Can you go down and click on your microphone? Bottom of the page on the left-hand side, you'll see a microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. If your assistant was here, I could tell them what to do, but okay. So Kay didn't take the extra step.
Mhm. That could be true.
The parable of the doorkeeper. Oh yeah, good. So hello, assistant. If you'll go to Carol's screen and go down to the left corner, you'll
Bottom
see a
corner.
microphone icon. Do you see the microphone icon? When you see the microphone
Yeah,
icon, there we go.
perfect.
Okay, Carol can talk now. Thank you very much.
It's all out here.
Okay, Carol, you're free to talk.
What was Kay's crime? Living? Was that his crime?
We never find out.
He
No.
doesn't know either. He never knew.
Nobody knew.
Producing? Perhaps it was the fact that he was living.
Yeah,
That-
it's the fact that he was alive.
Hmm.
That's the crime. Being alive and not knowing the purpose, and so always wondering if one is doing one's duty. That's the crime. I mean, that's what I think the crime is. I think this is all in Kay's head. There is no external, nothing in this is almost like Finnegan's Wake. There is nothing external in this book. This is a fever dream of an anxiety-ridden fellow.
Well, but that isn't that the way so many things just happen in these terrible times that they were living in.
Yeah.
It wasn't natural. It wasn't normal. And you didn't have any real control over them.
I think the
I
irony,
really see it more as a parable.
But couldn't he have done a few things that would have made him feel anxious? You know, like giving the loan to the housekeeper's son. There was a couple of things that would have made him anxious if he was worried that someone would have been after him. You know, that somebody would have reason to look for a problem. You know, the way none of us, I mean, this is not a good example, but you know, the way there was an Irish granny who had a green card who was going into America a week or two ago. And 30 years ago, she had committed a misdemeanor with a check for $30.
right.
And she had paid back the money. But it showed up on her file going through customs. And she was put in ice.
Yes.
She may still be there.
Right. Because the companies that actually run ICE make lots of profit off of everyone arrested. So they don't care whether they actually committed a serious crime or not. Their only purpose is to grab as many people as possible with whatever excuse they can come up with, because they're going to earn money off that person. This is the tragedy of our day. That
Yeah.
money has become so important that corporations are willing to commit crimes against humanity to make a few extra dollars.
But
Yeah,
Well,
everybody
Sorry,
who's
can
in America feeling anxious at the moment as to whether they've ever done anything that they don't know about that could have them arrested. Sorry, that's me stopped.
Okay.
Donna, you were going to say.
No, I just wanted to say, going back to Carl's question about what was the crime.
Yeah.
I think Kafka may have illuminated a little bit more, because the book that I have is a collection of his works. And I was just looking through them, and there's a story called The Castle. And it begins like this. It was late in the evening when Kay arrived. The village was deep in snow, the castle hill was hidden, veiled in mist and darkness, nor was there even a glimmer of light to show that a castle was there. On the wooden bridge leading from the main road to the village, Kay stood for a long time, gazing into the illusory emptiness above him, and so on. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to read on a bit more to see what's actually going on here. Is it the same K or not? I'm not suggesting we come back to it next week or anything.
Well, Camus said that the trial was the what did he say? The trial was the diagnosis, and the castle imagines a treatment.
Okay.
So it's a kind of it kind of follows on.
For the same character, Tom.
It's probably with the same character,
Same initial anyway.
But he wrote the novel America. He was never in America, but he wrote a novel, America, that was I think he might have written it before those two or after, I'm not sure.
It was
he's the strangest thing in it, the Nature Theatre of Oklahoma, and all these strange characters in it set in America. So he was kind of, his mind was working all the time in this kind of thing. But I think it is, as I think that lady said, I think the crime is existence itself. That's we're in this world and it's absurd. There's touches of Camus there. I think Duncan said, the myth of Sisyphus. Rolling the rock up to the top, and just when you get to the top, it comes back down. And
but Camus also said
things like that.
One must imagine Sisyphus as happy.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it just presages to me the story of the Jewish people of Europe.
Yeah.
Like, no crime, no alternative, just apprehension, thrown in a cattle car, sent across to Poland for execution or annihilation.
And
It's
more than Jews.
Identity had nothing to do with it except genetic.
Yeah,
line here. There's some notes at the start of my volume, and it says Kafka's most famous works are the two major novels, The Trial and The Castle, which are the books that first established his reputation, the works that led to the coining of the word Kafkaesque. Both are images of the human predicament that skirt the rim of nightmare. Both are illuminated by a sense of the absurd that can at times be more disconcerting than the half-glimpsed horror recurring throughout both novels. I think that's what frightens you, Joe.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of people like invalids who found themselves being taken out in the same way. Their genetic structure, maybe their heads didn't work quite 100%. So they're surplus, terrifying philosophy of life, which is
It's a
recurrent.
terrifying philosophy of life.
But not part of the Aryan race.
Well, the insane, the invalid,
Homosexuals.
We
The
just we just had
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
yeah, the kind of the gender confused, as we would call them now, and we just purify society. The very word that is an act of purification, which is an act of atrocity.
Yes.
We actually have a public figure in America
Yeah.
who is talking publicly about exterminating the homeless.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is I mean, I'm sure there are a number of people who think that, but this, to my mind, is the first instance in a very long time for anyone to say that publicly.
Yeah.
Didn't Trump say something about not wanting to see any wounded soldiers
Yes.
because it upset him? Not upset him.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Well,
it
he
did.
Yeah.
He didn't
But
want-
if I
He
can jump in
considers
for a
them-
second, I strongly recommend the reading of a book called The Search for Meaning,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
which is The Search for Meaning. And can you tell me the author's name?
Victor Frankl, is
Frankl,
it?
Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. It is, I think, a good book. If I were running a course, I would probably combine the trial with Viktor Frankl's book.
Right.
Well, the
Because
thing-
Viktor Frankl makes it very clear that if you analyze the parable of the door before the law, that no matter how dire the circumstances, as human beings and as spirits, souls, we have choices. The lesson, if you look at the parable and you think about it long enough, I think you will come up with the concept that the man before the door doesn't challenge, doesn't say, I'm going through this door. I don't care what the consequences. I'm going through this door. Instead, he is completely baffled by definitely an impressive doorman, but all the doorman says is, you can't go through the door. If you look at this as purely a nightmare, you have the main character not challenging an idea. And I don't know about you all, but at least a few times in my life, I've been told not to do something, and I went ahead and did it. And guess what? Lightning did not strike. I was not imprisoned.
Yeah.
And I think that I apologize to anybody who found this reading to be excruciating, but I am so grateful to have read the whole thing, because I've probably read the parable of the door 10, 15 times. And it was very opaque to me. But
Yeah.
by reading it after many weeks of Kay dealing with this and that, to read the parable of the door, it's kind of like, oh my God. You know, this is a real thing. This is a true parable with spiritual lessons in it.
Yeah.
I think when he tells him that this door is only for you only, it's a
Yeah.
kind of a chilling kind of a moment, and he only asked that question towards the end, the guy, the person sitting on the stool, but I think the doorkeeper says, but you've only asked me that now, but yeah, it is for you only, this door. you know.
Yeah.
I think it's like
Okay.
it's a kind of conundrum, you know,
Mm.
and the way he talks, the way he leads you into the fact that which of them is deluded, are deluded, or both deluded in a different ways. Like it's yeah, and then your head gets dizzy trying to figure this out, you know.
It's a dreamlike quality. Like the obvious question, you're in that situation. He doesn't ask the obvious question. What do I have to do to get entrance?
Yeah, yeah,
The equivalent, what must I do to be saved? If that was a sort of
yeah,
spiritual,
yeah, yeah,
what must I
yeah,
do? How do I get in? The obvious question
yeah,
after a few years, it must surely occur, like, what do I have to do? And there might have
yeah.
been an answer to that, but he'd say, I'm only a doorman.
I'm only a doorman, or I'm only a cherub or a seraphim with flaming swords,
Yeah,
are the entrance
yeah,
to
yeah,
the Garden of Eden.
yeah. I would say I really heard all those Thomas Aquinas arguments and all this sort of stuff echoed in the doorman story, like the
Yeah.
doorman
Mm,
looked on this way, looked on that way, on the other hand, this, and you come out the bloody door you went in only 10 times more confused. It's
I've just been reading on through the castle. And they have asked,
yeah. You're
where am I?
you're
What
al-
village
you're
is
al-
this
you're
I have
already
wandered
in the
into?
castle, Donna.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
Donna's
castle.
hot on the trail.
And the reply was, most certainly, the young man said slowly, while here and there a head was shaken over Kay's remark. The castle of my lord the Count West West. And must one have a permit to sleep here? Asked Kay, as if he wished to assure himself that what he had heard was not a dream. One must have a permit, was the reply, and there was an ironic contempt for Kay in the young man's gesture as he stretched out his arm and appealed to the others. What, or must one not have a permit? So it's certainly continuing on from the trial, that's for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that F.K. Kafka has a very tough father who really confused him and made him feel guilty all the time, with rarely knowing what he was guilty of. And that is and he's from a Jewish family, and which is embedded in a European culture, which is also being accused of all kinds of things, and has no way of knowing how to convince their tormentors that no, these are not true. What you're accusing me of is not true. So
In my
he's got a double layer of super guilt. But
there
it's a
was
guilt that he doesn't know what he's guilty of. And I think that the interesting part is that in our current culture, and I will make this bold statement, we all feel some guilt and we don't know what we're guilty of. And it's largely because today it's because things are so complex
yeah.
that there's no way to know if you're doing something the right way.
there was an article in my computer this morning. I think it was from the New Yorker, not the New Yorker, the New York Times, that it's talked about how in New York, at least, how much absolute complete information they have on every single person in that city that they're gathering when they get on the tube, when they park their car, when they go to eat, they know absolutely everything. So there's always something that can be interpreted as being a crime.
Yes.
Right.
So I think that kind of speaks to your statement, Duncan.
There is that, but even before all the computer stuff, there was a very important book written in America by a very successful lawyer called Six Felonies a Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which basically said that everybody unknowingly, for the most part, commits 6 felonies a day.
Yeah.
And that if the powers that be ever decide they want you, they can come up with something. And this was true 30 years ago. Well, now, it's true. There are tens of thousands of data points collected on all of us, with very few exceptions.
Yeah.
And so we're all capable of being accused of something at any time. And this is where the parable of the law is so important. You got to live your life anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta realize there is nothing that can be done about that. Directly anyway. But we have so much time as human beings in this particular life, and we have to live the life anyway. The problem with the fellow who was standing before the door of the law, in my opinion, is he didn't challenge it. He asked a few whiny questions every once in a while, instead of making a run at the door. My own particular thing is that in that particular parable, if Kafka had gone on, if the man before the door of the law had made a run towards the door guard would disappear. And yes, he would go into another chamber, and there would be even a more ferocious door guard, but it's the same thing. The Tibetans have been saying this forever. You want to reach nirvana, you have to face your demons.
Yeah.
You have to challenge your demons. You don't lie down and snivel every time you run into a demon. So that's, ironically, I think somewhere in Kafka, he knew that, because what did Kafka do at the end of his life? He left Prague. He started a final love affair. And he had a very good, for a tubercular patient with consumption, he had a very good last year. And his father was a doorman. His father tormented him terribly.
And the mother supported the father. She didn't speak up for Kafka.
Yeah, it's hard.
The father was a doorman. Did I hear you right? The father was a doorman.
No, he was a garment. He ran a garment store, or a haberdashery.
Yeah, he ran a garment store, but he
haberdashery.
I think you took tormented and changed it into doorman somehow.
Oh, I see.
The father came up from nothing and developed this business of being the haberdashery, and that was on like the main section of Old Prague.
Yeah.
And and then, like I said, the mother was just let him do whatever he wanted. She never confronted him about child rearing.
Right.
And then there was a nurse that also frightened Kafka as a child. The one that walked him to school every day. She tormented him.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then the other thing I wanted to say is I spent about a week in Prague. The landscape it comes across in the book. I know we're not trying to say anything is realistic, but there is a castle and a cathedral on top of a hill. Mm-hmm. And to get to it, you cross over a bridge, the Charles Bridge, and you start ascending through groves of vineyards, and just keep going up. I just thought that was quite interesting. It's a good symbolic way of positioning, authority over the common man.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the actually in classical Europe, that is the way things were structured. Mm-hmm. That seats of government and seats of religion would be built on top of, the highest points in the city, or would be exactly in the middle of the city
Yeah.
and would be made big, to intimidate you, to intimidate the citizenry. We are important.
Or control it, just like, all the castles through England and Ireland, to control the vista to see if an enemy was approaching.
That's true. Yes, I don't.
I think that was true of many castles all over,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all over Europe.
I think it was the capital of Bohemia, Prague. So, under the Habsburgs,
Yes.
and that all sorts of people and characters and everything passed through it from time to time. Alchemists and Kepler was there, and Tycho Brahe was there, and all sorts of people came to it. Yeah.
So our next book is Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
You didn't want to go back and.
We're going
now
from
I'm curious
France.
about reading the castle, but
Right. We're going from Joseph K. in Wonderland to Alice in Wonderland.
At the end of the book, we find out that 5 years has passed since Kay was accused.
Yeah.
And then he finds out at the end that he already had his trial. So what was on trial was his life.
Hmm.
Good point.
Well, that's kind of like what you said previously. Somebody said previously that just living.
Yeah,
was
I said that earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ready for Alice.
Yes, I think, yeah, I am too. I'm glad we read this, but I think we need something more delightful and happy.
You ready to lighten things
Charming.
up a little bit?
Yeah, just given the way the world is.
Yeah, this one is too much with us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we need
Just,
to read Harry Potter.
I had another copy there. The chapter was missing in it, but the introduction was by the English writer Zadie Smith.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll just read a sentence. She begins with, "You hold then in your hands a description of your symptoms by one of the great physicians of the 20th century. The doctor's greatness lies precisely in the fact that he never pretends he can cure you."
Read that last part again.
I like that sentence,
Yeah. Oh dear. Oh.
oh boy, no reassurance.
I also like the fact that even through the whole lot, we laughed so much. It was
Yes.
fabulous. And again, I think that's a kind of Kafkaesque kind of situation where what we're reading and that kind of stuff, and we laugh so much about it. And yeah,
Kind of have to.
yeah.
I'm glad it's over.
It's not over, Joan.
Yeah, but
Oh.
that was a horrible ending. I didn't know the ending.
No.
Yeah.
horrible.
Well, it's a problematic ending because he didn't, if you will look a few pages in, they have the unfinished chapters, they have postscripts. There's lots of stuff.
Well, I think the book could have gone on forever.
I'm sorry, Duncan, what are you talking about? There's more to the book?
Yeah, maybe Tom can speak to this. Are we absolutely certain that this is the ending that Kafka?
No,
Wanted?
Kafka said that it wasn't finished. Yeah,
Oh,
but
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Max Brod got the manuscripts that Kafka had, and he arranged the chapters as well. There's no kind of Kafka hadn't put the chapters in order, so he arranged them in order as well. And some people say that Kafka wrote the beginning and the end of it first, or the so-called end, and then he went back. But I don't think, again, it's kind of, it's open to question whether
Right.
this is
And
really
I would,
the thing.
I realize a lot of you are very glad that the book is over and it was heavy and all that. But I would like you at some point to consider, is this a fever dream? Is everything happening inside of
Except it's
Joseph K.
it's so real.
Yeah.
Well, all of our dreams are based on. That's not really. I would have to push back on that, Joan. There are certain points that we can transfer to our current reality, but there's a lot of very dream-like things that happen here.
Yeah, that's for
I
sure.
don't know. I'm not sure. I'd have to read the book again to follow your train of thought, Duncan. It could be delirium on the
Maybe you'll
part.
just dream about it.
Well, maybe it's delirium that Kafka is describing, and you're saying is dreamlike.
Yeah. Do you know what this feels like to me? And this is tying in what Tom said. I've seen publications like this that they're because I'm connected with a publishing place, and we used to publish books at one stage. And points come with authors where you have to say to them, send us what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a send you what you have. And they feel like that. And you could leave it for another 5 years with them. They won't come up with a finish. But when the editors get to it and begin to get him in and talk, then he, and this is a fraction of what the man had in his head. And you say, look, we need to kind of bring the goose into land, we called it. Bring the goose into land.
Yeah.
And this is a goose that has to be brought into land. And you can see all the unfinished pieces of it, that fantastic stuff that he can work on. And we had this conversation before, I want to repeat it. Like those two little girls, the fantastic characters. What are you going to do with them? And very often the people who write the last chapter first. And the last chapter you're supposed to write is the first one. You see, because if you see what they put out for their openers, when people who are new, they just start to write, and it's awful. Just tell them skip the first 5 chapters, get into the center of the book, or begin at the end. And this is an incomplete work, and makes great sense. It's still got that dreamlike quality, but someday they might find a later manuscript. It'd be very interesting if it was published.
And as Donna has pointed out, just like with Joyce, it may be that if someone were to go into other of Kafka's works, you could be drawing lines.
Oh yeah.
Well,
there was a lot after his in the last number of decades about which country should have an archive of Kafka's work? Should it be Germany, or should it, because he spoke German, or should it be Israel? He aspired to move to Israel. And that's kind of another story.
Yeah.
And then certain works were given to certain people, and do they own them when the states figure that Kafka is their major writer? But we've spoken about Germany. Like, does Germany deserve to have an archive of Kafka's work? Because under the Nazis, 3 of his sisters were exterminated. But Germany has spoken up for an archive, and they may have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, these sorts of questions, Anne, are just like Joe was saying about if you were a publishing company. At a certain point, you have to take the information, say, send me what you got, and we'll try to make something of it.
Well, there are stories about great American writers too, where they overwrote. They wrote thousands of papers, and then the problem was to edit it down to something that was saleable.
That is the usual thing. The end product ends up being smaller. That's why I'm sure a moderate publishing company getting their hands on Ulysses, it should become a 300-page book.
Yeah.
Well, our time has passed. I'm going to declare an official end reading of the trial. I'm going to point out that there are 10 of us here today. So for all of the kibitzing that went on, you all have shown marvelous fortitude. And Carol, I hope you will continue to join us. We're going to move on to Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
So, or Joseph K. in Wonderland.
Okay, great.
We could write that.
Thanks, everybody. I really
Thank you.
appreciate this
Bye.
experience
Thanks,
with you.